Hello there, friends. Welcome to BJJ Meditations. This is BJJ Meditations episode number 69. I'm your host, Joe Hannon. I'm back from the jungle, but man, I feel like I'm still in the jungle, both from a time zone perspective and also just from a rhythm of life perspective. The place really gets under your skin, both from a permeability standpoint, just from the sheer humidity levels, but also just from the daily rhythm and the quantity of life per square inch perspectives that I mentioned on the last episode. The place just has like an energetic radiance to it that I've never encountered anywhere else. And I'll tell you, I think there's something to this blue zone theory of longevity, where you live can make a big difference on the length and quality of your life. At any rate, yeah, I believe this place is consistently one of those places. So hard to forget, longing to go back. But at any rate, I'm back. And while I was there, in addition to all of the surfing and jujitsu that I did, I also had a long conversation with Josh on the way back to the airport about many things, and one of which was sort of my trajectory and growth as a grappler. And he, as he tends to do, issued me a challenge that he thinks would help inform my coaching perspective. And I agree with him too on this. The challenge was to win Masters. And that's prompted a series of questions for me and a lot of introspection, which, if you listen to this podcast with any regularity or frequency, it might as well be called the great hour of introspection, I suppose, or the not so great hour of introspection, depending on how you feel about the podcast. But anyway, it prompted a lot of introspection, both on the plane and in the ensuing days since I've been back. I've been thinking about this a lot. This question of, can I actually win Masters? And there's one way to look at this question, and I suppose this is a question that might be applicable to any of you who compete with any regularity. But we can look at this from a logistical perspective. So the Masters division. I can only speak to my experience in the Masters division in the last 5 years or so. But I've said this, I believe, on previous podcasts, that Masters used to be this thing where people who are not professional athletes go and compete and enjoy themselves. And now, as jiu-jitsu has become more and more of a mature sport, you have this emerging older class of people from the adult division who were world-class athletes who are now competing in Masters. And I don't begrudge them their right to compete in Masters at all. I think that these people should be able to do jiu-jitsu how and whenever they want, sort of on their own terms, and compete and make their careers accordingly, right? Like, they make a living doing this stuff. They should be able to showcase their art wherever and however they can. But it is sort of a daunting prospect to be someone like me who has like trained, let's say, recreationally with somebody like Marcos Tinoco, and then entertain the prospect of having to face Marcos Tinoco in Masters Worlds. Luckily for me, I believe Marcos' Masters 1, but my division, black belt, Masters 2, medium heavy, is stacked. Like, the guy who consistently wins it does all sorts of really impressive flying attacks, and he is no joke, right? This guy is like a world-class athlete. And I don't know anything about him personally, but I imagine that a lot of these people who were formerly champions in the adult division, who have now migrated over to the Masters division, many of them probably do jiu-jitsu almost exclusively, right? And there are certainly some people who are consistently in the top tier who are balancing, like me, other ambitions, like their professional life and their family responsibilities. But the best of the best in this sport, I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, are the people who are attacking this with that sort of level of focus, that level of focus of a professional athlete. So what would that look like for me if I was truly training to be the best, what would I do? Like, no, thinking about this purely abundantly, right? Like, no constraints whatsoever. I would probably be training at least twice a day. I would probably be visiting other schools with increased frequency. It's something I used to do more frequently before I had a son. Now I don't really have so much time to do that. I would be training multiple times a day for sure. And I would be resting between those training sessions, like seriously resting, like hopefully taking a nap or something like that before my body breaks down. Yeah, what else would I be doing? Strength and conditioning would probably be consistent with what I'm doing right now, but I would make recovery a higher priority because I would have to, because my body would be breaking down faster by virtue of the fact that I just don't recover as well as I used to. I'm not somebody who recovers well generally. I never have. You know, I've always needed like a little bit of extra food, a little bit of extra sleep to get the job done. But yeah, I would definitely need to double down on that and probably include some more consistent body work in there just to kind of keep everything together. So logistically, like that's what I'm thinking about. Like, okay, if I were truly from an abundant mindset perspective going to go after this, like what would I do? So that's kind of straightforward. But now there's this greater question of belief. Have I ever truly believed that I could win Masters? I think I've said this on previous episodes. Up until recently, I really haven't even had the conviction of thinking I could win in the black belt division. And I came as close as I've come to doing that at the last New York Open. And granted, I got on the podium because I won 1 out of 2 matches. If I were to win Masters, I'm thinking I'd have to win at least 5 or 6 matches, something like that, to get first. So yeah, I've never really fought. I don't think I've fought more than 3 times in any competitive environment. So like that would be a first for me. So there's a certain amount of conviction that has been built in my last victory, but there's a lot more conviction that needs to be built for me to get there, you know? Like for example, out of curiosity today, I've never done this before. I looked at the rankings, the IBJJF rankings for my belt and division, and I suppose I should be happy that I'm inside the top 1,000, but I'm number 838. I forget how many points I have now, but it's not much. I want to say it's like 9 or something like that. And of course, you know, there are guys who are top ranked who have like 1,000 or more points. So there's a ways to go for me. There's a ways to go for me. And whenever I'm competing with anyone, and I'm just being brutally honest here, guys, like I'm showing you the darker aspects of my personality, I guess. But whenever I compete against anybody, there's this sort of underlying assumption that the person I'm squaring up with is better than me. They train harder than me and they're smarter than me. And I don't really know why I make those assumptions, because it's just as easily, it could be just as plausibly true that all of the opposite of those things are true. There are certainly times when you go out in a competitive setting and like things just don't break your way. Luck certainly has something to do with it, or like maybe you're just having a bad day. Maybe you're sick. Like I was dog sick at my last competition. Maybe things would have been different if I weren't sick, for example. But I feel like this problem of a lack of conviction is huge for me, and addressing it is going to be critical if I truly want to make progress as a competitor. So I'm thinking hard as a result of this challenge from Josh about what is the root of this lack of conviction, and what, other than a continued track record of success or building a track record of success, would help to sort of amend it. And then there's also this question of like, what would it take to win? And I don't mean the logistical stuff that I just mentioned. I mean, sort of like the more amorphous identity based stuff. Like, for example, what would it take to win? Comfort with losing, I feel like I've gotten really skilled at that as a competitor in jiu-jitsu and in so many other competitive arenas. It's certainly not that. Uh, I've lost many times and survived. I've lived to tell about it. I think it's more something along the lines of like, what am I afraid to find out? And I think this has something to do with this notion of big assumptions. We all have these underlying assumptions about ourselves. And for all intents and purposes, they're interwoven in our sense of self and our ego. And we preserve these big assumptions because they are so intertwined with our sense of self and our ego that if the big assumption were to be proven false, it raises the question of, well, who am I? Who am I? And I wonder if there's some part of me that really asks myself, like, or this makes this assumption that you are the guy who works really hard and has some success, but never has all the success. You never go all the way. And I got to ask myself, like, who would I be if I suddenly proved that big assumption wrong? In some ways, it could set me free. It could open up new levels of performance to me. And in other ways, it would be like starting over. Like, who is this guy who can do this thing? I don't know. It's an interesting question. And in some ways, it's also a completely superfluous question because I'm still going to do Masters Worlds. I always was. In fact, now I'm going to do the New York Open in August, just to get some more reps in and hopefully some more ranking points in to prepare for this. And you even mentioned that to Josh. I said to him, yeah, I wasn't planning on doing this competition, but maybe I will. Maybe I'll use it to hopefully accrue some more points so I get a better seed at Masters Worlds. And he just looked at me and he said, well, why wouldn't you do it to win? And of course, I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, why wouldn't you do that to win? And it seems absurd. Like, anything I would do, I would do and I should do to win. But then I thought about it a bit more and I stumbled on this realization of conviction. There's underlying beneath all of this, there's this doubt about whether I can do this or not. So regardless of what happens, I will be there in Las Vegas in August, and I will be there in early August in New York. And I will be about the business of exploring this lack of conviction, trying to understand where it comes from, and trying to hopefully drive a fucking stake through its heart, because it's just not doing me any good. And maybe that resonates with you folks. Maybe you've experienced something similar. If you have, I'd love to hear about it. You can write me at bjjmeditations@gmail.com or respond in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. But yeah, let me know what works for you. That's all I've got for you this week. As always, if you're enjoying the podcast, the best way to support it is to book a coaching session with me. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm just looking for, as I mentioned on previous episodes, I'm just looking for like 1 to 2 more steady clients. So you kind of want to get in while you can. Generally, the way this works is somebody will email me, we'll schedule an initial consultation that's free. And from that consultation, I put together a training proposal of like, okay, we talked, you answered some questions for me. These are the themes I see as potentially areas of growth for you. And these are sort of the ways we can train those themes in jiu-jitsu. What I'd like to offer to you is if you email me and elect to go through this initial free consultation, I would be happy to provide that training proposal for you at zero charge. And look, goal one of this podcast has been from day one, equipping people with information and skills that I've learned in my work in the consulting business of performance. I want to democratize that. I want to share it with you. So as part of that mission, I'm happy to share that training plan with you. And maybe you are DIY enough to take it on yourself. I want you to be able to do that. And if not, I'm here to work with you. I'm here to support you. But only about 1 to 2 more of you, because I'm working with a stable of some awesome people right now, and quality over quantity, my friends. Anyway, thanks a lot for tuning in, folks. This was a very sort of navel-gazy podcast. Hopefully it's useful for you. And regardless, we'll talk next week.